Hi there, I'm Eitan, and welcome back to Wix Fixer. This is the fourth installment in our custom product page tutorial, in-depth look. So this is all updated and with a deeper look into different parts of a custom product page on Wix. In the previous tutorial, we talked about the name of the product and the pricing of the product. And in this tutorial, we're going to be talking about the product options or choices. Okay, so if we take a look here at a specific product, then you will see that inside of the product dashboard, we have the option of adding different product options. Okay, so for example, this product has the color option, and I can add another option in here. Let's just say size, and let's just say large, medium, small. Okay, and I add those in. Okay, so this product now has two different options if I hit over there and save. And the question is, how do we display that on a custom product page? And the answer is that we're going to do it using a repeater. So I'm going to go ahead over here and I'm going to add a repeater to our product page. Let's scroll down over here and select the generic list repeater. And I need to go ahead and make these a lot smaller. So let me just zoom out a little bit so it's easier to work. And I'm going to go ahead and make that much smaller. So let's say yay big. And I'm also going to make the repeater itself about half the size. And let me drag that over to the column. So we're going to be putting these options right here under the price. Okay, just like they would be on a regular product page, and just as you can see them, let's say over here inside of Etsy, which we're using as our template for the custom product page. Okay, so once I have my repeater in here, I actually need to add in the drop downs into the repeater. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add a drop down element. So let's look for input and find a drop down element. And I'm just going to add this drop down element here and put it right here inside of the repeater. And now you can see that this repeater has multiple drop down elements inside of it. And basically we're going to use the data from our product in order to tell the repeater how many of these drop downs to display and what the choices should be and what the title should be and everything. Okay, so we just need to do a little styling just to make it look a little more like our Etsy style, because that's the whole point of what we're doing. So for the corners, I'm just going to give it, let's say, I don't know, 15. That's a little too much, maybe 12. And I'm going to give it a little bit of shadow. So let's make this like a really high blur shadow. And I'm going to make the opacity really low. And yeah, the border is more, it's like basically, let's see what the border looks like. It's like a very thin gray. So yeah, like let's say 1 pixel gray. And maybe even like a lighter gray than this, so something like that. And I'm just going to change our repeater's background to white. Change background, sorry, and color. I'm actually not going to change it to white. I'm going to reduce the opacity to 0. Okay, just in case you have a different background, and then that really covers your bases. So that's opacity 0. Okay, it's getting closer. It's also important for us to add a title or label to this dropdown. So I'm going to go here into settings, and for the field title, I'm just going to say, okay, and oops, it looks like our dropdown is yellow for some reason. So let's go ahead and change that. Dropdown list, and change this to, let's say, black, and change the text to black as well. Okay, that's pretty good. It's not exactly Etsy, but it's pretty close. And I'm just going to do one more aesthetic change, which is to bring this up to here and make this smaller, and also make the distance between these slightly smaller in the repeater. So if I go here to layout, then I can make this, let's say, 5. Yeah, okay, that looks a lot better. Okay, great. So now what we need to do is use our data to populate this repeater. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to call this options repeater. And let me just zoom in a little bit so you can see everything a little better. Excellent. And then each drop down, I'm going to call option drop down. Okay, so first of all, let's take a look at our data, because that's always the most important part. And you can see here that we have an object called product options. Okay, and here we have color, and in this specific product, we'll also have size because we just added it into our dashboard. Okay, and it's important to notice that this is an object, so it's not an array. That means we're going to have to iterate through the keys of the object. And we're going to be using the information that we have here. So like, for example, name will be our title and our choices. So we're going to have to use, for example, the value, okay, as the value of our choice, but the description as the label of our choice. Okay, and let me show you now how to do that. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up, oops, just need to scroll down here. So this was for our prices. So I'm just going to name this price setup. And we're going to be doing all the things for our options right above that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is set up the repeater. So we have our options repeater. And then we're going to set up the on-item ready for the repeater. So we have item and we have item data. And for now, I'm not going to add index, but if we need it later, I'll add it in. And what we need to do is basically now say that for each of these items, the options repeater, let's say dot label, will be equal to, okay, so this doesn't have label. Sorry, not options repeater, options dropdown. Okay, that's each individual dropdown inside. And when we pass our data through, so I'm going to be passing through an array with all of our, I'm going to be passing in an array with all of our product options. So it's going to be item data dot choices. Sorry, no, it'll be item data dot name. Okay, item data dot name dot name. Okay, and for our choices, we'll have options drop down. We should have this as item and not W. Dot options is going to be equal to item data dot choices. And now there's two ways that I could approach this. Either I can pass in all of the data to our repeater. Okay, pass in all of this data and then map out the data, sorry, not this media item, sorry, all this data. I can pass this all into our repeater and then decide what to do with it inside the repeater, or I can organize it outside of the repeater and pass it in as I already need it. I'm going to pass it all into the repeater because there might be parts of this data that I decide to use inside the repeater, and it's not, there's no big difference if I sort it. You know, there's no big advantage if I sort it before I pass it into the repeater. So once I get this data into the repeater, I'm going to need to map it out. So dot choices dot map. And then for each choice, I am going to say that we're going to have an object where the label will be equal to choice dot description. and the value will be equal to choice dot. Okay. And then when we select one of these, so the person will see the description, but they'll actually be passing the value on to wherever we want to pass it on to. Okay, so this is enough for setting up our options repeater. And now we just need to pass it the data. So let's create a function. So populate options repeater. And what we need to do here is, first thing we need to do is create an array for our data. So let's say const, let's call this options data. And we're going to have it equal to an empty array. And then we are going to say this product dot, what's it called? I think options, right? Product options. Okay. Where's my function? This dot product options. Okay, and then, so this is an object. So we actually need to use object dot keys. And what this does is it iterates through all of the keys of this object, which will be one for each option. And then we can run a for each. And where each of these will be a key. And for each key, what we want to do is options data dot push. And we're going to be pushing this product dot product options key. Okay, so we're going to be pushing the specific object there into the options data. So basically, I'm just converting this from an object into an array. Okay, and there might be other ways to do this, but this is the way that I'm choosing. And then what we're going to do is that I'm going to add an if statement in here. So I'm going to say if the, let's say, let me think for 1 second, index. Okay, so I need index in here. If index plus 1 equals to this product dot product options dot length. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to do is say that, okay, if we just pushed the last option, then set the data for the repeater. So options repeater dot data should be equal to options data. Okay, and the reason I'm doing this inside of the for each and not outside is that sometimes I've experienced that because like this might run too early if it's outside. So the for each will still be running in a loop, and then this for some reason runs. It just has to do with how for each works. Don't ask me more than that. So then we just need to call the populate options repeater here. Okay, so populate options repeater. And just to recap, this is the on ready for the data set. So whenever this data set's ready, all this is going to run. And that means that we'll have our product already and we'll be able to get all this going. Okay, so let's see if this worked. Moment of truth. So let's go into preview. And this absolutely did not work, and I think I know why. And that is because we don't have an ID. So if you remember when we did the media items, then when we pass data to a repeater, we needed to have an ID, and this ID needs to start with an underscore. So it needs to basically look like this, and it needs to be a string. And as you see here, these don't have an ID here anywhere. So we're going to need to add that ID in. And yeah, so we're going to push. So let's say we're going to say const option equals to this. And then here I'm going to spread in the option. And I'm also going to spread in, I'm also going to add a property of ID, which will just be the index dot toString. Okay, and that should be enough to make this work. So fingers crossed. Let's go into preview mode again. And still not working. So what I'm going to do here is start consoling our data. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to, right before we populate the repeater, I'm going to say console.log options data. And let's see what the data looks like and where we are making a mistake. So you get a free debugging lesson in addition. Okay, so we're not even calling that. So basically, there's a problem with what I wrote over here. Index plus 1 equal to this product options length. Okay. So as I said, products options is not an array. So this is not going to work because I don't think there is a length property for objects. So what we need to do, let's see, let me think. So for each key, we have index. So I could probably use this instead. Let's test that, and then if that works, maybe we'll add another abstraction to make this a little more readable in terms of code. Yeah, so that worked. And here you can see our two drop-downs. And you can see here that here we have color and black and brown, and here we have size, large, medium, small. Okay, so this worked basically. There's some problems with styling. We have here what's the best flavor. So I'm going to go back to the editor and I'm going to do some refactoring for our code and styling and stuff like that. So let's go over here and first of all, let's start off with these drop downs. So I'm going to change this to please select an option. And we can actually make this a little more advanced because I can actually go into here and I think I can edit the placeholder as well. So if I go here and I say item options drop down dot placeholder, I can make that equal to please select a, and I could say, let's say item data dot name. Maybe there was a better data point to use here, name or option type. Let's say option type. Please select a item data dot option type. So it'll be like, please select a color, please select a size, which is a little more friendly, a little slightly better UX. We also had some styling issues here. So let me just go into our styling, custom design, and I'm going to do some editing here on the shadow. So I'm going to make the blur maybe 20. Maybe even less, maybe 10. Yeah, just so you don't see it kind of popping out of the bottom of the repeater there. Okay, let's hope that's better. And here I just wanted to do another slight cleanup where here I'm going to say const Let's call this option keys. And that is equal to this. And then here we're going to say, should be lowercase, option keys. And here as well, we can write option keys, just to make things a little more, slightly better code. Okay, so this looks decent. Yeah, and later on, we're going to be adding in here, obviously, like, on change, on select, so that we can actually collect the data from when somebody makes a change here to the dropdowns. Because we're going to need to get variants, we're going to need to do a lot of stuff in here. But I think that's outside of the scope of this part of the tutorial. So for now, we're going to end here. So that's how you take the options and you use a repeater to display all the possible options. Because if you were to add these by hand, you'd be restricting your product page to only certain predefined options. And as we said in the first part of this tutorial, we really want to create a situation where if somebody edits the product in any way through their dashboard, it will be reflected onto the product page itself. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.